Good morning, everyone. Let's get ready to rise for the national anthem. To this day, I believe we are here on earth to live, grow, and do what we can to make this world a better place for all people to enjoy freedom. Remembering these words by Rosa Parks, the First Lady of Civil Rights in the United States, I'd like to wish you all a great morning and a warm welcome to the second edition of the International Conference on Gender Equality. Can I hear some noise for that? Thank you all. As you all know, this is a hybrid event with a live audience quotient and a lot of online audience joining us as well. But I hope that all of you are going to make up for our online audience as well when it comes to claps and applause in general. Yeah? I'm Adra Balachandran, and I am delighted to be back on the ICGE stage for the second time as your host. And after this first edition in 2015, which brought together some diverse voices in finding solutions to some pressing issues in gender, governance, and inclusion and inclusivity, here we are at the second edition of ICGE, which focuses on the mediating role of empowerment for gender in sustainable entrepreneurship and social business. And we at Gender Park earnestly believe that this wait for the second edition was well worth it as we all sit together in this convention center in our own campus of the Gender Park. That really calls for some happiness and applause. Can we please hear it from you? So without any further ado, let's get started with the inaugural ceremony, and to deliver the formal welcome address, may I please invite Dr. P.T.M. Sunish, the Chief Executive Officer of the Gender Park.
A warm good morning to all of you. Respected Srimati K.K. Shailaja Madam, Honorable Minister for Health, Social Justice and Women and Child Development, Government of Kerala, Srimati Brinda Karat, Sri Pradeep Kumar, Sri M.K. Raghavan MP, Mr. Slender from Sweden, Ms. Barbara Langley from USA, Ms. Aishwarya from Orissa Financial Service, Thoyb Mohammed, former Minister for Maldives, and our governing body member, Dr. Mridul Lipan, and other dignitaries who are joining us virtually. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the Gender Park's second International Conference on Gender Equality, ICGE II. We have 200 participants here with a wider base online from Australia, Belgium, Bangladesh, Costa Rica, Cote d'Ivoire, El Salvador, Fiji, Germany, Mauritius, Nigeria, Papua New Guinea, Sweden, South Africa, Spain, Switzerland, Thailand, UK, United States of America, and Venezuela may have braved the pandemic and come to Calicut to join us in this new premises, which will be inaugurated on 14th by the Honorable Chief Minister. Let me assure you, we are following the state's COVID protocol meticulously. Welcome, Maryam Davleji. The Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, will inaugurate the Gender Park and dedicate to the public on Sunday, February 14th. The Chief Minister will also lay the foundation stone of the International Women's Trade Center, iWTC, Gender Park's distinct initiative towards an ecosystem for women entrepreneurs. The Gender Museum, the Gender Library, this Convention Center, Amphitheatre, and Vice Fellowship will also be inaugurated at the event. Please allow me to briefly say a few words about Gender Park and about the theme for 2021 conference before I shift to my main duty to welcome our guest. Gender Park, established in 2013, is an initiative of the Government of Kerala to work towards gender equity and empowerment in the state. Headquartered in the state's capital, Thiruvananthapuram, and the main this campus 24-acre is set at Calicut here. UN Women is an equal partner in this venture, and together we also plan to develop the Gender Park as a South Asian hub for gender equality. One of the Gender Park's major objectives is to organize periodical conferences, encourages the creation and capture of knowledge on gender equality, as well as share experiences and disseminative lessons on what works well and what needs to be strengthened. The first international conference on gender equality, themed Gender Governance and Inclusion, which is in association with UN Women and supported by UNFPA, was held in Kovalam, November 2015. ICGE won over 25 national and international speakers in addition to hosting the official release of the state's policy of trans persons in Kerala. Our theme for ICGE II is Gender in Sustainable Entrepreneurship and Social Business, the mediating role of empowerment. Development literature documents the potential of social business to transform society by creating jobs, to deliver services to the underserved, and to contribute to the achievement of the social development goals. Social business presents even more of an opportunity if they can focus on ensuring services to the underserved in the state, or on improving the livelihoods of marginalized groups, or in addressing the impact of climate change in a small such states like ours, Kerala. This has been demonstrated in many of our East Asian neighbors. This said, we need to equally recognize the challenges if social businesses are be effective and sustainable. Experience has shown it is not easy to combine or marry commercial tools with social objectives. This becomes the marriage that needs a lot of effective communication, patient hand-holding, and determined resolve on the part of all stakeholders to ensure success. Gender Park's She Taxi have been given us a great insight to the constraints faced in running business with social objectives. We need to understand how to structure social businesses without losing flexibility. Identifying the key elements of facilitating and supporting ecosystem for such businesses to flourish and grow, ensure availability of appropriate and flexible forms of financing, and above all, the result framework within which to monitor and evaluate the impact of these investments to maximize achievement of objectives for all. We also need to integrate the concept and mechanics of social businesses into the curriculum of our educational institutions, as well as into our think tanks, to generate knowledge and create a generation of youth entrepreneurs. While Kerala does not have a demographic bulge, its educated and employed create a pool of untapped talent and potentially budding entrepreneurs. Kerala has also achieved the first generation of empowerment and right-based policy, the first time in India, for trans persons. Our women are equally educated at all levels, primary, secondary and tertiary. Our health indicators are the best in the country. Yet, the participation of women in labour markets is still low. In his latest budget speech, the Honorable Finance Minister of Kerala noted that creating job opportunity for women and other marginalized groups is the priority of the government. Gender Park feels that social businesses provide a win-win situation. They not only help to create jobs and spur growth, but also support social and environmental objectives. It is also time for us to address second-generation equality issues, constraining greater economic empowerment and equip a whole new generation of women, trans persons and men from socially disadvantaged groups through support of establishment of micro and medium social enterprises that can help to meet broader objectives in the process. This conference is only a beginning of a process of consultation. We intended to consult widely with our existing institutions that support entrepreneurship, successful and not so successful entrepreneurs, and the youth to understand what an effective policy framework for social entrepreneurship should consist of. Our Chief Minister is a strong supporter of equality, as you all know. His government has always taken a progressive stand on equality, whether it is for women, trans persons or persons from marginalized groups, and initiated many programs and missions to create finalizing ecosystem for innovation, for technology and for entrepreneurship. Our department minister and chairperson of Gender Park, beloved K.K. Shailaja teacher, has been an inspiring leader for all the projects and programs of the Gender Park, designed with the goal of achievement freedom, equality and humanitarianism. She has been helping the collaboration with UN Women, and signing of MOU has yet another milestone for us, ma'am. Our partnership with UN Women marks the beginning of collaboration on a shared mandate that creates equal opportunities for our diverse population that coexist for equally outcomes. We are now equal partners in the vision of realizing the Agenda of 2030 and closing the gender gaps across adopted indicators and targets. We propose to work on innovative and tech-based solutions to address gender inequalities and strengthen inclusion of women and girls in the development process. Our campus here in Kozhikode will be developed into a Southeast Asian hub to a convergence center for all the gender-related activities. With these brief remarks, let me welcome our honorable guests and our participants, both present here and attending virtually from around the world. The conference will feature 90 speakers, 8 plenary sessions, and 8 parallel sessions with notable cultural programs, 2 days. The ICGE II will have the distinction of being the first carbon neutral event in Kerala by conforming to the Global Sustainable Development Goals. The Gender Park is committed to promoting sustainable projects and aims to become a role model in supporting the state in its journey towards creating a carbon neutral Kerala. So, this conference aims to hear from you and to learn from you about the best way to inculcate a spirit of social entrepreneurship and create an ecosystem in the state within which social businesses can flourish. In addition to the conference statement, which is issued at the end of the conference, we also hope to deliver very soon thereafter a draft policy framework to the Government of Kerala. With that, I once again welcome all to the second edition of ICGE. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Sunish, for contextualizing this conference and also for letting us into the journey that brought us until here. The inaugural session or the ceremony of ICGE II is being presided over by the man who has spearheaded development in his constituent assembly, Kozhikode North, often going above his call of duty as an MLA. We are really proud to have as the chairman of this session, Shri A. Pradeep Kumar, MLA of Kozhikode North, and I'd like to invite him for his presidential address.
ബഹുമാനിയായ കേരളത്തിൻ്റെ ആരോഗ്യവകുപ്പ് മന്ത്രി കെ ശൈലജ ടീച്ചർ, ഈ വേദിയിലും സദസ്സിലുമായിരിക്കുന്ന പ്രിയപ്പെട്ടവരെ, ജെൻഡർ പാർക്ക് എന്ന ആശയത്തെക്കുറിച്ച്, അതിൻ്റെ ഉള്ളടക്കത്തെക്കുറിച്ച്, അതിൻ്റെ ഭാവിയെയും പ്രവർത്തന പദ്ധതികളെയും സംബന്ധിച്ച് ഈ പാക്കിൻ്റെ CEO ആയ ശ്രീ സുനീഷിൻ്റെ വളരെ വിശദവും സമഗ്രവുമായിട്ടുള്ള അവതരണം ഇവിടെ നടന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞു. ഈ ജെൻഡർ പാർക്ക് കോഴിക്കോട് അനുവദിക്കപ്പെടുന്നത് 2011 ബഡ്ജറ്റ് അവതരണത്തിൽ ഇന്നത്തെ ധനകാര്യമന്ത്രിയായിരുന്ന തോമസ് ഐസക് തന്നെയായിരുന്നു അന്നും ധനകാര്യമന്ത്രി. അദ്ദേഹമാണ് ഇവിടെ കോഴിക്കോട് സ്ഥലം അനുവദിക്കാൻ സ്ഥലമുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നമുക്ക് ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു ആശയം ഗവൺമെൻറ് അന്ന് തയ്യാറാക്കിയിട്ടുണ്ട്, അപ്പം അതിനാവശ്യമായിട്ടുള്ള പണം അനുവദിക്കാം, ബഡ്ജറ്റിൽ അനുവദിക്കാമെന്ന് പ്രഖ്യാപിച്ചത്. ബഡ്ജറ്റിൽ 10 കോടി രൂപ അനുവദിച്ചു. 2011 കോഴിക്കോട് ജെൻഡർ പാർക്ക് നടപ്പാക്കുമെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. പിന്നീട് ഉള്ളൊരു സാഹചര്യത്തിൽ ആ 10 കോടി രൂപ നഷ്ടപ്പെടുന്ന സാഹചര്യം പിന്നീട് കുറച്ച് കാലം കഴിഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ ഉണ്ടായെങ്കിലും വീണ്ടും അത് പിന്നാലെ വന്ന ഗവൺമെൻറ്റിൻ്റെ കാലത്ത് അത് പുനരാരംഭിക്കാനും മുമ്പോട്ട് കൊണ്ടുപോകാനും കഴിഞ്ഞു. പക്ഷേ ഇതേവരെ ജെൻഡർ പാർക്ക് ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നത്, ഇവിടെ പഴയൊരു ബംഗ്ലാവ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, അത് നവീകരിച്ച് അതിൻ്റെ അഡ്മിനിസ്ട്രേറ്റീവ് ബ്ലോക്ക് എന്നെല്ലാമുള്ള പേരിലൊരു നവീകരിച്ചൊരു കെട്ടിടവും ഒരു സെക്യൂരിറ്റിയും മാത്രമായിരുന്നു ജെൻഡർ പാർക്ക് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് കഴിഞ്ഞ കുറേ കാലമായിട്ട് ഇവിടെ ഒരു സാന്നിധ്യമായി ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. പുതിയ ഗവൺമെൻറ് വന്നു. ബഹുമാനിയായ മന്ത്രി ശൈലജ ടീച്ചറുടെ നേതൃത്വത്തിൽ ഈ ജെൻഡർ പാർക്ക് എന്താണോ വിഭാവനം ചെയ്തത് അതിൻ്റെ സമഗ്രതയിലും സമ്പൂർണതയിലും യാഥാർത്ഥ്യമാക്കുന്നതിനുള്ള നേതൃത്വം ബഹുമാനിയായിട്ടുള്ള നമ്മുടെ മന്ത്രി ശൈലജ ടീച്ചറുടെ നേതൃത്വത്തിൽ നടന്നു. അതിൻ്റെ ഭാഗമായിട്ടാണ്, ആ തുടർച്ചയായിട്ടുള്ള പരിശ്രമങ്ങളുടെ സ്ഥിരമായിട്ടുള്ള നേതൃത്വത്തിൻ്റെയും ഇടപെടലിൻ്റെയും ഭാഗമായിട്ടാണ് ഇന്ന് നാം കാണുന്ന ഈ മനോഹരമായിട്ടുള്ള ജെൻഡർ പാർക്ക്, ഇതിൻ്റെ സർവ്വ സൗകര്യങ്ങളും ഇൻഫ്രാസ്ട്രക്ചറും ഒരുങ്ങിയത്. ഏതാണ്ട് 10-27 കോടിയോളം രൂപ ചെലവഴിച്ച് ഈ കൺവെൻഷൻ സെൻറ്റർ പൂർണ്ണമായി ഒരാഴ്ച മുമ്പ് ഇവിടെ വന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ കൺവെൻഷൻ സെൻറ്റർ ഈ നിലയിൽ പൂർണ്ണമാകുമെന്ന് ആർക്കും പറയാനാവില്ല. അത്രയും വേഗതയിൽ ഇതിൻ്റെ പണി നടന്നുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയായിരുന്നു. അപ്പുറത്തുള്ള ആംഫി തിയേറ്റർ, നവീകരിച്ച കെട്ടിടത്തിൽ ലൈബ്രറിയും മ്യൂസിയവും ഉൾപ്പെടെയുള്ള സജ്ജീകരണങ്ങൾ, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ അതിനനുബന്ധമായുള്ള അക്കാഡമിക് ബ്ലോക്ക്, ഇതെല്ലാം ഇപ്പോൾ യാഥാർത്ഥ്യമായതോടൊപ്പം ഇവിടെ സുനീഷിൻ്റെ പ്രസംഗത്തിൽ സൂചിപ്പിച്ച പോലെ ഇൻ്റർനാഷണൽ വിമൻസ് ട്രേഡ് സെൻറ്ററിന് 170 കോടി രൂപയുടെ തത്വത്തിലുള്ള ഭരണാനുമതി നേടുകയും അതിനാദ്യഘട്ടം പ്രവൃത്തി പദ്ധത്തിലേക്ക് നമുക്ക് ചുവട് വെക്കാൻ 25 കോടി രൂപ ഇപ്പോൾ അനുവദിക്കുകയും ചെയ്തു. ഉടനെ അതിൻ്റെ നിർമ്മാണ പ്രവർത്തനത്തിലേക്ക് പോകാനാവും. സംസ്ഥാന ഗവൺമെൻറ് വിഭാവനം ചെയ്യുന്ന ഈ ജെൻഡർ പാർക്ക് എന്നുള്ള ഈ ആശയം, ഈ ഒരു പ്രസ്ഥാനം, അതിനെ രാഷ്ട്രാന്തരീയ നിലവാരത്തിലേക്കുള്ള ഒരു വലിയ സ്ഥാപനമായി വികസിപ്പിക്കുക എന്ന കാഴ്ചപ്പാട്, അത് അതിവേഗം യാഥാർത്ഥ്യമാക്കുന്നതിന് ഇവിടെ ഒരുക്കിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഈ അടിസ്ഥാന സൗകര്യം വികസനവും, നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ ഇവിടെ സമാരംഭിക്കുന്ന ഈ ഇൻ്റർനാഷണൽ സെമിനാറും ഇവിടെ നടക്കുന്ന ആശയവിനിമയവും എല്ലാം വഴി കഴിയും എന്നാണ് നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കുന്നത്. അതിനെല്ലാം അതിൻ്റെ ഇൻ്റലക്ച്വൽ ലീഡർഷിപ്പായി ധൈഷണിക നേതൃത്വമായി നമ്മുടെ സാമൂഹ്യനീതി വകുപ്പും ബഹുമാനിയായ മന്ത്രി ശ്രീമതി ശൈലജ ടീച്ചറും, ഒപ്പം തന്നെ സർക്കാരിൻ്റെ കാഴ്ചപ്പാടുകളെ ഫലപ്രദമായി പ്രവൃത്തി പദ്ധതിയെത്തിക്കാൻ ഇതിൻ്റെ CEO ശ്രീ സുനീഷിൻ്റെ നേതൃത്വത്തിൽ ഉദ്യോഗസ്ഥ സംവിധാനവും എല്ലാം നന്നായി പ്രവർത്തിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നു. നമ്മളിന്ന് കാണുന്ന ഈ മനോഹരമായിട്ടുള്ള ക്യാമ്പസ് യാഥാർത്ഥ്യമാക്കുന്നതിന് നമുക്ക് അതിന് കഴിഞ്ഞത്, ഇത് ഏറ്റവും ഭംഗിയായി രൂപകൽപ്പന ചെയ്ത ഇതിൻ്റെ ആർക്കിടെക്ട്സിൻ്റെ സേവനമാണ്. സ്പേസ് ആർട്ട് കോഴിക്കോട്ടെ കേരളത്തിലെ തന്നെ ഏറ്റവും പ്രശസ്തമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ആർക്കിടെക്ചർ ഫേമാണ്. അവരുടെ രൂപകൽപ്പനയിലാണ് ഈ ക്യാമ്പസ് മുഴുവൻ രൂപപ്പെട്ടു വന്നത്. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ നിർമ്മാണ രംഗത്ത് ഇന്ന് ഏത് ബഹുരാഷ്ട്ര കമ്പനികളോടും കിടപിടിക്കുന്ന വിധത്തിൽ പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്ന ഊരാളുങ്കൽ ലേബർ കോൺട്രാക്ട് സൊസൈറ്റി, അവരാണ് ഇതിൻ്റെ നിർവഹണം നടത്തിയത്. സ്പേസ് ആർട്ടും ULCSും ചേർന്നുകൊണ്ട് അവരുടെ ഭാവനയും അതുപോലെ നിർമ്മാണ രംഗത്തെ, കൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ രംഗത്തെ മികവുമെല്ലാം സമന്വയിപ്പിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് നടത്തിയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ഇടപെടലിലൂടെയാണ് നമുക്കൊരു പക്ഷേ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് മറ്റ് പല സർക്കാർ നിർമ്മാണങ്ങളിലും കാണാത്ത മികവോടെ, മിഴിവോടെ, തികവോടെ ഈ ക്യാമ്പസ് യാഥാർത്ഥ്യമാക്കാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞത്. ഇതിന് നേതൃത്വം കൊടുത്ത എല്ലാവരെയും അഭിവാദ്യം ചെയ്യുന്നു. വിശേഷിച്ചും നമ്മുടെ ബഹുമാനിയായ മന്ത്രി ശൈലജ ടീച്ചർ, അവരോടൊപ്പം ഇതിനെ പിന്തുണച്ചു നിന്ന എല്ലാവരെയും അഭിവാദ്യം ചെയ്യുന്നു. അതിവേഗം ഈ ജെൻഡർ പാർക്ക് എന്താണോ വിഭാവനം ചെയ്യുന്നത് അത് സഫലമാക്കാൻ എല്ലാവർക്കും കഴിയട്ടെ എന്ന് ആശംസിക്കുന്നു. എൻ്റെ വാക്കുകൾ അവസാനിപ്പിക്കുന്നു.
Thank you, sir, for those wishes and also for the vision with which you've been leading this constituency. No matter which words I choose to describe the next speaker, I would still fall short because she is our warrior leader in many a crisis, our very own teacher who's inaugurating ICGE II, and it's my pleasure and privilege to present to you Shrimati K.K. Shailaja teacher, Honorable Minister for Health, Social Justice and Women and Child Development, Government of Kerala.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Ministers, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, our partners and guests from UN Women, all our participants gathered here and joining us live from across the world. It is with great pleasure and honor that we commence the second edition of the International Conference on Gender Equality, ICGE II. Thank you so much for joining us. In better times, we would have hosted all of you here in Calicut at our new facilities of Gender Park, but given circumstances, we thought an online come physical conference was next best option rather than wait. This said, we are making progress in addressing this COVID-19 pandemic. As you all know, the COVID-19 is spread throughout the world and it became a great challenge to the whole human community. In the first phase, Kerala succeeded well in containing this virus, that is during the lockdown. I think Kerala had one of the long drawn pandemics. This pandemic started in Kerala on January 30th, 2020. And 1 year is over. Our fight is throughout this 1 year, we were fighting with COVID-19 pandemic. And the first part, we contained the virus, and as you know, this virus is such a virus and its behavior, it is not fully explained now also. And the first part, we flattened the curve to the 0 level. That doesn't mean the virus threat is over and it is the end. But anyway, we flattened the curve to the 0 level, and at that time our mortality rate was 0.5%. That is one of the lowest mortality rate throughout the world. That is during the lockdown period, March 24 onwards, there was lockdown throughout the country, and we were also implementing that triple lockdown and other things strictly. And after May 3rd, the situation changed and the central government of India lifted the lockdown. And we have also, we are forced to open some parts, that is because the entire society, the governments have to save the lives and also the livelihood. So we have to open the workplace and the other places, common places or public places. And because of that, the interstate transport also reinstated. And as you know, Kerala have most of the large number of expatriates, and also the other state also, they are returning back to Kerala, and from the hotspots, they returned to Kerala, and the virus spread all of a sudden. Throughout the world, it happened like this, and we have more cases during that time. But the second part also, Kerala is fighting well. We have some very good human development indices, and in the health sector also, we have so many first places. Like the child mortality rate, it is too low in Kerala. That was 16 out of 1,000 live birth in 2016, but the government fight hard to reduce it further. And now when we examine this thing in 2021, in a report of the National Family Health Scheme survey report, National Family Health Survey report, it go down to 4.4, below 5. And that is a great achievement, you know. And the maternal mortality rate also, it is too low in Kerala. And the life expectancy is high in Kerala, to 74 years, like that. But here we have so many threats in front of an infectious virus. That is, the demographic and epidemiological threats are here. Because of our lifestyle, we have so many lifestyle diseases. Lifestyle diseases are rampant in Kerala. Kerala is known as the diabetic capital of the country. That's a great challenge in front of a spreading virus. And also the old age population, that is a good thing on one part, that is an achievement on one part, but during the pandemic season, it is a great threat, you know, to save the old ages, people who are above 60, how to save them. We introduced reverse quarantine, etc., to save them, and we were working hard throughout the time. And it is too difficult to reduce the mortality rate, but we fight hard. And also some demographic vulnerabilities are also here, that our population density is higher in comparing to other parts. Our population density in Kerala is 860 for 1 square kilometer, and an average our country's population density is 430. And you can imagine such a thickly populated state, how we fought against this pandemic. Now the cases increased, but we were trying to reduce the infection rate or to delay the peak. The peak will occur definitely. The virus is like that, it will go to the society and it will peak. But we were trying to delaying the peak. All of a sudden, if peak occurs, thousands of lives we have to succumb to in front of this virus. But we tried our best to delay the peak, and also at that time we got some breathing space to build our health system. And we were always trying, now also we are trying to make the potential of virus below the health system capacity threshold, and we achieved that thing also. Our hospitals were never flooded with virus. There were proper place. We have always half of the ICUs were left unoccupied, and also 20% of the ventilators were occupied throughout this period, and there are ventilators, oxygen supplies, etc. And maintaining this system like this, we are again trying to reduce the mortality rate, and thanks to everybody who worked behind that, our mortality rate is 0.4 now, reduced it to 0.4. That is a great achievement. We can reduce the mortality rate and save thousands of lives. But nowadays also we are fighting against the virus, and that is why we have to conduct a hybrid conference like this. Otherwise we can host all of the guests in the premises, in the campus, as Sunish said earlier. Sunish explained everything about this gender park, and I think and I am happy to say that the COVID protocol is strictly following throughout this conference. We arranged everything according to the COVID protocol, and everyone should maintain that thing. We will maintain COVID protocol throughout the 3 days. The Honorable Chief Minister of the state, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, will join us on 14th morning to formally inaugurate the new facilities of the gender park. I think most of you visited the campus, and we can build it is in a great manner, and comrade, this Honorable Chief Minister will inaugurate all the facilities on 14th. The gender park is planned as a world-class facility and aims to become a premier institution in learning, research and knowledge management on gender equality through design and implementation of cutting-edge projects that will create decent work and ensure inclusive development. Let me also express our satisfaction and honor that UN Women is an equal partner that will support us in making Gender Park a regional hub of gender equality. We have a discussion with Nishda Satyam, the southern part CEO of these UN Women, and UN Women agreed to be an equal partner, and that will support us in making Gender Park a regional hub of gender equality in the region covering 4 countries, India, Bhutan, Maldives and Sri Lanka. We look forward to a strengthened and effective partnership. Women and trans persons are healthy and women highly educated in Kerala, that is the situation in Kerala. We have the highest human development index in the country. We have started novel projects for women and transgenders and other vulnerable peoples throughout the society through social justice and women and children department. I am dealing with the health department and social justice and women and children department. In social health sector, we have so many innovative projects, and as you know, we are going forward to reduce the problems of the entire society through several innovative measures through the Ardhram mission. I am not explaining that. Through social justice department, we started some umbrella projects under which there are so many sub-projects. For the elderly, we started the Sayamprabha scheme, and for the differently abled, we started the Anuyatra scheme. There are 35 sub-projects under the Anuyatra scheme for the differently able to support them the early detection to rehabilitation. That is a life cycle approach, and we are conducting that. I am not explaining. And for the transgenders, we started an umbrella project called Rainbow, under which the education of transgenders, skill development, rehabilitation, everything is there. We have started. We have to complete it throughout these years, and we have to move forward. A long way to walk, you know. And we are doing that for the transgenders. They are participating with us in all of our novel projects. And 2017, we formed a new department for women and children, thanks to our Chief Minister. Chief Minister is always saying that without the empowerment of women, an egalitarian society doesn't exist. And he is trying to empower women in Kerala through this department. And our government decided to start a new department for women and children. Through that newly formed department, it started so many things. Our slogan was, be brave, go ahead. For the women, we raised that slogan, and we conducted several programs under that, and we have so many sub-projects and programs through women and children department. And we introduced some projects to these transgenders also in that part also. And we have the highest human development index in the country, but at the same time, we acknowledge that there is a lot more to be achieved, particularly in terms of economic empowerment of women and trans persons and their participation in labor market. It is not as high as we would want to be. Moreover, the social and economic impact of COVID-19 and recent natural disasters, you know that 2 times the flood occurs here, that Oki hurricane occurs here, and also Nipah and COVID-19, everything occurred. And due to these natural disasters, along with the return of non-resident Keralites, has impacted our country and has created a new group of vulnerable people at risk. In addition, people such as farmers, fishermen, artisans and tribes have become more vulnerable because of their dependence on natural resources, all impacted by climate changes. And business managers are judged, not convey my thanks to Pradeep Kumar MLA especially for this. And also I want to thank PTM Sunish. He's the man behind, he's the person behind this thing. Gender equality happened only when women and men join hands and work hard to achieve something on that ground. Throughout the world got opportunities to get their ideas to the reality, and they can come here, work together here, and it is a fantastic opportunity. It will provide, I think so. And Sunish is behind that, definitely. I can say like that. I express my heartful thanks to PTM Sunish, our General Park CEO, for all these achievements. And there is a very good team behind Sunish. I express my thanks to arranging this conference and doing this fantastic work of General Park, joining hand with CEO. All of them are here, and also the governing board members of General Park, our General Advisor, Dr. T.K. Anandi and Mini Sugumar, and our General Park Advisor, the Meera Velayudhan, and our former General Park Advisor, Geeta Gopal, and very personalities, eminent personalities are sitting in this auditorium with us. Our Ajidarthi is there, he is a fighter now also, and Gadija Mundas, Dr. Gajida Mundas is there. I am not mentioning each and every name. Our beloved Maryam Dhavle is with me. We were fighting for women equality throughout the years. It was National Secretary Maryam is a hard fighter, and with the support of each and every persons like this who wants to be, the society should be equal, egalitarian concept in mind, and they are helping us very much. I am not mentioning everyone. I want to express my thanks to our Honorable Chief Minister who is supporting us more than anything for these developments. With the, and I thank everybody with these few words. I want to declare our international conference is inaugurated.
Ma'am, it is your foresight to see the opportunities in social entrepreneurship and sustainable business that has led us, the Gender Park, to organize this ICGE II with this theme. Thank you for your inspiring words and also for inaugurating ICGE II. Ms. Phumzile Lambo Nguka was supposed to join us for a special address today. She is the UN Women Executive Director and UN Under Secretary General, but due to a personal emergency, in fact, her mother passed away yesterday, so she could not join us today online. She has sent us her heartfelt wishes in the successful completion of
friends from electronic and print media and other participants. I welcome this international conference on gender equality, and it's a great privilege and honor to be part of this international conference, and I extremely honored to speak in front of such a wonderful leader in the state as well as in the country. And respected dignitaries present, I am happy to deliver this address today in the presence of all the esteemed guests. I would like to start by saying that there is a need for platforms like this international conference on gender equality. It creates a space for people from various backgrounds and walk of life to come together and share ideas and build healthy associations to take the conversation around gender equality forward. The theme of this conference is also for high relevance as it talks about the need to examine gender in sustainable social entrepreneurship. In this context, there are numerous opportunities that can open up for transgender persons to create employment and income generation. Here, the role of the government is very important and indispensable. After the 2014 Supreme Court judgment, many improvements have been witnessed, but we need greater gender sensitivity approaches to mainstream the presence of transgender persons in all spheres. It's great to see many state governments work towards policies for transgender persons, and I am happy to speak about this at ICGE Edition 2, because the first edition released the Kerala State Policy for Transgenders. I hope more states and local governments pick up from this. I would like to also highlight that such a conference should be a reminder that the crux of all this conversation is the need for social acceptance, because every individual, irrespective of their identity, deserves a respect of life, life of respect, dignity, and growth. Thank you for patience hearing, and I also thanks to the entire team of Gender Park to giving this opportunity to speak, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Aishwarya, for your honorable presence here and also for those words and wishes. Joining us next online for a special address is the former member of Rajya Sabha and a fiery leader of the left in India, Ms. Brinda Karat.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this inaugural session of an extremely important initiative of the LDF government in Kerala. My dear and dynamic sister, K.K. Shailaja, the Health Minister, the Minister for Women and Child Development, MLA, Pradeep Kumarji, and all the international participants in this unique initiative by the LDF government in Kerala, and my dear sisters and brothers, Sahodari, Sahodaranmare, Namaskaram. I am very sorry that I cannot be there in person to share this extremely important occasion with all of you, with my physical presence, but here I am online, and unfortunately, since I have a pretty unstable internet connection, I shall keep my comments short. So there are just basically 3 points that I would like to make. The first is that I think it's very important that this conference has as a text, an important text, the issue of mediation of empowerment. And the way I understand this whole concept of empowerment, sustainable development, and gender streaming is because I believe that the whole issue of empowerment, we should not see it only in relation to empowerment of women in their relations with the market or with market strategies. Of course, that would have to be in focus when we are talking about increasing livelihoods for women. But I would think that with the decades of experience now, we find very strongly that unless there is cultural empowerment, and unless women are abled or enabled or through self-mobilization to break the shackles of prevailing cultures, which stereotype women in so many ways, the issue of access to the market is very much linked with that too. Now, in a prevailing or a dominant culture, in many parts of the world, and certainly in India we see it, that for every step that a woman takes forward in smashing those cultural and barriers which stereotype her and her work in a very particular way, we find we are being pushed 2 steps back. And this constant assault, a backlash, I would say, against the growing independence of women and the importance of understanding those forces, those regressive forces in any given society, which tend to push women back and which tend to denigrate the steps that women themselves, through their courage, take in breaking those myriad barriers. And we have broken barriers. I mean, which profession is there today? I would say almost across the world, and certainly in India, which were supposedly male professions in which women have not made an entry, have not breached that iron wall which had kept them out. I mean, in India, for example, we have bus drivers, we have petrol pump attendants, we have mechanics, we have women in different offices, we have women in science. So, and in Kerala, of course, you have the wonderful She Taxi initiative, which has been taken and supported. So it's not as though women themselves do not want to break those barriers and come out from the confines of the 4 walls. However, those forces which want to push them back, I think that it is very important for a gender park of the kind and the conceptualization of the gender park in Kerala, to also contextualize it in various cultures which exist in India, certainly, and perhaps since we are going to make this or try and make this a South Asian hub, the go-to place on issues of policy, of advocacy, of experimentation, of innovation, and of hand-holding. So I think those aspects can also be included, and I'm sure they will be included in this concept of the mediation of empowerment of women. So don't just look at it as a market strategy, but also look at it linked to various social realities. And in India, I would very specifically speak about the caste system, which today I believe is one of the greatest barriers. I mean, friends across the world would be shocked to know that even in many government programs today, where women who belong to the so-called untouchable communities serve midday meals as workers in many states across India, some parents, instigated by regressive forces, would say, no, I'm not sending my child to school if she's going to be fed by a Dalit cook. Fortunately, in Kerala, you have overcome it and you have smashed that, a barrier, but it does exist. So we have to be extremely sensitive to the different aspects of cultural lives as they are lived of women in our society and see how the gender park addresses those issues in a wider manner. The second aspect I would like to touch upon is that we are building a center, we are building an institution of immense importance. And I'm not going to all the details which our minister has, and also Dr. Sunesh has detailed for all of us, giving us a very clear idea. But I have certainly one suggestion which, through our experience with working with different sections of women, say through the self-help group movement, through the unique Kudumbashri movement in Kerala, which is the voices of women themselves. So often international agencies, and I'm really happy that UN Women is very much a partner in this whole project, I think there is a tendency to underestimate the ideas and innovations of women themselves. And there is a tendency to present a model. And in presentation of that model, which there may have been a lot of research and, thinking of experts on it, but I always feel that institutions remain dynamic only if those for whom those institutions are being built have a strong voice. So in Kerala, with the wonderful experience of the local bodies, the panchayats, communities, and of course Kudumbashri, in helping to overcome the social and economic problems and livelihood crisis caused by the pandemic, I would say a very important part of institution building is to have mechanisms in which you can bring in women's voices, bring in women's direct experiences, and change your policies and change one's approaches on the basis of that collective voice of women. So that's the second point. And the third is, and I think that's very important in today's world where there are such polarizing tendencies, we tend to polarize politically, community-wise, and language-wise, race-wise, ethnicity. There are so many aspects which tend to polarize society today. And I believe an institution like the Gender Park must have bipartisan support. It must have support which goes beyond the immediate government or official and administrative construction that we may have with one particular government in power. Because there's a tendency that if this gender park really grows and it's very successful, well, then the credit will go to A, B, and C. The credit will not go to me, since I'm there now, if ever. So bipartisanship and building unities across these divides, I think, is extremely important, because unfortunately, we have seen a tendency, and I can only speak about the Indian experience. I'm sure others in this conference will speak about their own experiences in their own countries. But I have seen that whereas in the 80s and the 90s, with the proliferation of big women's movements and struggles, which had a huge global impact, and we know about the Beijing conference, we know about many of the important aspects with the parallel conference of NGOs and women's organizations had. So there was a pressure of struggle and movements to ensure that every effort is not taken back by this or that government in power. That is what we require. And for that, I think the importance, and this goes beyond the official construction of this conference, and this goes beyond it, to my appeal to women's organizations and NGOs and those in the struggle for women's rights, because it is those struggles which actually lead to the building of such wonderful institutions. So that is also very important, to make sure that such a wonderful concept and an institution which is being built in Kerala, not just for Kerala, not just for India, but for South Asia, and as a unique example to the world, will not be trapped by those in power at the center or in other places on basically narrow sectarian grounds. So I think that it's the voices of women today, it's the voices of trans persons today, and I really congratulate you for this wonderful initiative. More power to you, more power to all the participants, and I think with our united efforts, we can go forward. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity to participate in this important seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for those words with a renewed emphasis on the need for breaking barriers and also for magnifying the voices of ordinary women. Joining us for a special address next, online again, is the Second Secretary of the Political Division of the Embassy of Sweden in India, Mr. Jonathan Klum Stillander.
Greetings, my name is Jonathan Klum Stillander and I am Second Secretary at the Swedish Embassy in New Delhi. I'm covering domestic politics in India and I'm also the embassy's focal point for our feminist foreign policy. I am sorry I couldn't be present in Kerala today to listen and take part in an interesting dialogue on a theme that is very dear to us, but allow me instead to make a short remark this way. First of all, thank you for the invitation. This conference theme, gender equality and sustainable entrepreneurship, are both of great importance to our government, and there are topics that are and will stay relevant for a long time. Finding synergies in the way we work to achieve UN Sustainable Development Goals is not a shortcut. It is actually about understanding the connectivity of various issues and how these goals are mutually reinforcing. We would like to thank the government of Kerala for leading by example in the way that you approach and work with these topics. Sweden was actually the first country in the world to launch a feminist foreign policy. The reason for us having a feminist foreign policy is basically the status of gender equality in the world, which obviously calls for greater action. We see that we are slowly moving in the right direction on many fronts, but still huge gaps and challenges remain. Systematic subordination, oppression, and violence still mark the daily lives of countless women and girls around the world. And this is despite a lot of the binding conventions that have been signed, such as the Universal Declarations of Human Rights, for instance. So allow me to just tell you a little bit more about our feminist foreign policy. It is structured around three core principles, 3 R's, which is the framework for us that we use to analyze conditions in the context that we work in. So it's structured around rights, representation, and resources. Rights is about, for instance, rights to education, to work, inheritance. And when we look at representation, we look at how women are represented and where the decisions that affect them are made. So that could be in parliament or in boards or in the legal system. And resources is basically posing the question of whether gender equality is taken into account when resources are allocated, for instance, in central government budgets or development assistance projects. So pursuing feminist foreign policy includes, for us, pursuing a feminist trade policy as well. That means that a gender perspective should be applied when trade agreements, for instance, are made. And also entrepreneurship is a great part in this too. So this is about understanding the power of unleashing potential of the entire population. So it's partly a goal itself to increase women's rights in these fields, but it's also about seeing this as a vehicle of change and having an equal starting field, which is beneficial for all when we are facing the problems that we are in the modern world. Sustainable development, but also peace and security. Sweden is working actively with our feminist trade policy, and one example is our support to the International Trade Center in their work, for instance, in the launch of the initiative She Trades, which aims to connect millions of women entrepreneurs to the market. And here in India, we engage, for instance, with the Swedish business community present to discuss how we can incorporate gender sensitization projects or workshops, knowledge sharing sessions, etc. We have also launched a project aimed at skilling underprivileged women in non-traditional female workplaces. So this is an ongoing work, and there's a lot to be done, and I really hope to stay in touch with you about your views and path forward, and I would love to share more about our feminist foreign policy and the work that we're doing here in India. I think we can all share experiences and best practices. And with that said, I wish you a very interesting and productive conference. So to the government of Kerala and to the representatives of the gender part and all the participants, thanks for your attention and good luck with the conference. Thank you.
Our friendship with a country like Sweden, which is right at the top when it comes to sustainable development across sectors and segments, is definitely going to be beneficial. Thank you for this association and for taking the time out for us, Jonathan. Our next speaker is staying wide awake at a really odd time to be able to join us online. You saw a glimpse of her here. She is the director of the Center for Women's Economic Empowerment at Center for International Private Enterprise, or the CIPE, in the United States. It's my pleasure to present to you Ms. Barbara Langley.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you all. And indeed, it is a little bit early in the morning for me. It's about 1 a.m., but I'm on target this week. Actually, I've had Asia conferences each and every morning. So it's a wonderful thrill for me to be with you today. Dear honorable ministers, ambassadors, organizers, and distinguished guests, please allow me to extend first my sincere gratitude to the Gender Park, the government of Kerala, and the U.S. Consulate General in Chennai for this opportunity to participate in this conference and to offer a few remarks. My name is Barbara Langley, and I'm the director of the Center for Women's Economic Empowerment at the Center for International Private Enterprise, or CITE, as we're more commonly known. Through the miracle of modern technology, I'm joining you today from my home in Laurel, Maryland, and offer you very warm greetings despite the cold and snowy weather outside my window right now. I do wish that we could be together in person, but hope that our paths cross one day again soon. What an incredible initiative you all are making with this virtual and in-person environment. to draft a sustainable entrepreneurship and social business policy framework. I congratulate you on your efforts, and I'm excited to see the results of your time together over these next few days. CYPE certainly stands with you in this effort, and we are happy to help in any way that we can. For those of you that may not be familiar with CYPE, let me offer a few quick remarks about our organization. CYPE is a nonprofit affiliate of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, working internationally to promote private sector-led approaches to the most difficult economic challenges in developing markets. I'm delighted as well to note that just yesterday, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce announced that Suzanne Clark will become its next Chief Executive Officer of what is the United States' largest business advocacy organization, the first woman to hold the position in the organization's 109-year history. CYPE was launched in 1983 as one of the 4 core institutes of the National Endowment for Democracy, which still supports our work today through an annual allocation of funding by Congress. We also compete and have been awarded projects through the United States government and foreign donor grant processes, as well as various foundational partnerships over the years. 3 years ago, CYPE established the Center of Excellence for Women's Economic Empowerment to better promote its thought leadership and expertise on critical issues and to help advance strategies piloted with proven impact from our regional teams. CYPE's projects are active in 6 regions of developing markets, including 64 countries currently, with dozens of field offices and representatives, ensuring that democracy and free markets deliver for the most vulnerable populations, including women-owned and led businesses. In fact, through our South Asia Regional Network for Business Women's Organizations, we were honored to partner with the Association of Lady Entrepreneurs of India, the Association of Women Entrepreneurs of Karnataka, and the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry Ladies Organization as mentors to business women's organizations in such countries as Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. The efforts that you're making with this framework are incredibly important. For example, globally, the Women, Business, and Law report published by the World Bank estimates that women have just 3/4 of the legal and regulatory rights of men, with India's score coming in on average at 74.4. This report is a study that examines 8 key areas of a woman's life, from education to retirement, and everything that touches her economic agency in that period of time. While the United States' score comes in at 91.3, we too have some work to do, particularly as the world of work is changing rapidly. The global pandemic is certainly wreaking havoc on all of our economies, but it is forcing business and society to adapt. Still, this pandemic disproportionately impacts women's economic empowerment in comparison to men. For example, the U.S. jobs report these past few months has been particularly alarming. In December 2020, women accounted for all of the total jobs lost in the country, with women accounting for 55% of net jobs lost since the start of the pandemic. The reasons for these disproportionate numbers are fairly obvious, as women often face an increased burden of child and elderly care in these times. However, there's certainly more to it. As Nicole Mason, President and CEO of the Institute for Women's Policy Research, noted, sectors that women traditionally work in are less likely to have flexibility. So when employers are inflexible or women can't come to work because of caregiving responsibilities, they end up leaving the workforce. Indeed, the hardest hit sectors in this pandemic are also women dominated, including the education sector, the hospitality industry, and retail, among others. These sectors are more likely, in the United States at least, to be part-time with no paid sick leave, and they do not necessarily offer the ability to work from home. The United States Family and Medical Leave Framework also does not quite apply to the pandemic realities, as it focuses on leave for the birth or care of a newborn or adopted child, and care for a serious medical condition of oneself or one's family member. As a result, many working women lack access to support work-family policies to enable them to participate fully in the labor force while managing their caregiving responsibilities. Estimates show that just 21% of US workers have access to paid family leave. For some worldwide, the story is actually even more horrific, as lockdown orders across the globe leave women at home with domestic abusers. Reports from partners within our National Endowment for Democracy's networks also report that many women that still have a job to go to have been manipulated with the false hope of keeping their job in return for sexual favors. Domestic abuse and violence and harassment in the workplace has been a plague in our societies prior to 2020, but it is now coined as a shadow pandemic resulting from COVID-19 by the UN. In the United States, the Center for Disease Control estimates that the cost of domestic violence in this country, the United States, exceeds $5.8 billion per year. The bulk of this money it typically extends to direct medical and mental care services of the survivor. However, nearly $1 billion of this total is estimated in lost productivity. At the global level, the World Bank has estimated that the cost of domestic violence is 4.4 trillion US dollars, more than double the size of the Canadian economy. In some countries, gender-based violence and harassment in the workplace accounts for 3.7% of GDP, more than double what these countries are spending on education. While these statistics are grim, much is being done by both the private sector and government and civil society to tackle these problems. For example, thanks to awareness raising on the issue of violence and harassment in the workplace, the International Labor Organization ratified Convention C-190 in June of 2019. Countries are now facing growing pressure to ratify the convention back home and implement strategies to change the culture of gender-based violence and harassment in the workplace. Just last evening, I joined a discussion with women chambers of commerce in South Asia who are interested in setting up a dialogue on this issue with their counterparts in the labor movement, as well as champions in civil society and the political sector. In the United States, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation is reviewing the burden of care issue, noting that we are facing a reality in which families need support from the business community to help meet the dynamic and ever-evolving needs of the child care equation. The foundation will be exploring these and other scenarios in the coming months as states slowly begin to reopen and navigate the specific challenges brought on by the pandemic. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has created a Reopening Business Digital Resources Center with tools and resources to help employers and employees reopen their businesses safely and successfully. In addition, a number of large corporations such as Lowe's, Verizon, and Goldman Sachs have also stepped up with financing to protect small businesses, especially those that are women, minority, or veteran-owned. The Biden administration has a $1.9 trillion economic package under consideration in the Congress that includes a number of things, but also funding for things like improved ventilation in schools and encouraging schools to reopen in person, to encourage schools to reopen in person for learning safely, as well as child care allowances for low-income families. Ultimately, whether in the United States, India, or elsewhere around the globe, women are facing huge setbacks to the empowerment right now. However, this can easily course correct, but it will take all of us, just as the speakers before me had mentioned. We need to work in partnership to make real change happen. Men must do more, and women need to amplify their voice in society. The private sector must assume a leadership role on these issues and serve as a proactive partner with governments to chart a brighter future for our societies. I'm really proud to stand with you today, and I pledge to assist you in any way that I can and for your efforts. CIPE has a number of free resources on our website, with more to come specifically within the gender space this year. I'm also happy to connect you with our network of extraordinary free market and democratic experts as you chart the way forward. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I wish you a successful event and a successful framework. Please stay safe and healthy, and thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Langley, for elucidating on the global changes in workforce and working environment amidst the pandemic, particularly from the perspective of women. This will be one of the key determining points in the themes that we discuss in these 3 days. And for the special address next, I'd like to have Mr. Thoyb Mohammed. He's the Managing Director of Visit Maldives, Maldives Marketing and PR Corporation. He was also the former State Minister for Tourism, Arts and Culture in Maldives. Mr. Thoyb Mohammed.
Respected dignitaries and delegates, I'm happy to be part of the second edition of the International Conference on the Gender Equality themed around sustainable entrepreneurship and social business, a topic that is very relevant in the present. I applaud the efforts and dedication of the Honorable Minister K.K. Shailaja Teacher and the Gender Park team for organizing such a conference to bring about a policy framework for sustainable social businesses. I'm from Maldives, where tourism is one of the highest contributors to the economy. When tourists think of Maldives as a beautiful tourist destination, there's so much as we, as Maldivians, are challenged with. Luckily, our destination does not have the problem of over-tourism yet. The plans for minimizing environmental impacts while still giving a unique tourist opportunity is practiced in many areas too. In 2015 and 2016, the coral reefs in the Maldives suffered from the phenomenon of coral bleaching. It's being said that 60 to 90% of coral in the Maldives has been destroyed by bleaching, but is still possible for the reefs and their ecosystems to recover. This has been bolstered in certain parts of the Maldives by coral conservation projects. Private sector initiatives have been involved in coral reef restoration projects in the Maldives since 2005, with its pioneering and groundbreaking coral framework techniques, where corals can grow at a rate of up to 10 to 15 centimeters per year. This self-sustaining method of coral propagation is quickly transforming reefs and sandy seafloors into thriving ecosystems, acting as refuge areas for juvenile fish and crustaceans. Many resorts in the Maldives have also created guest-oriented conservation activities, educating visitors on coral rejuvenation, such as snorkeling trials and coral planting. Many tourist establishments invite their guests and team members to participate in the coral planting programs and are monitored regularly by specialized teams. The Maldives has very strict fishing regulations to maintain fish stocks and preserve the stunning marine life. In fact, reef fishing is strictly prohibited in marine reserves. Several initiatives implemented in the Maldives to ensure the well-being and safety of the island nation's marine life. For example, many turtle rescue centers have opened across the Maldives in recent years, where marine biologists and vets have access to laboratory, X-ray, ultrasound, and surgical facilities to help rehabilitate injured turtles. Several community education programs have also been created by resorts and non-governmental organizations to educate locals on sustainability. These programs include a range of activities, including conducting regular beach and reef cleanups on local islands, developing renewable energy sources, educating locals on practicing responsible fishing, and much more. In fact, during the past year, as most of the travel trade youth were in their own islands, many eco parks were created. Some of these are so breathtaking and brings an added economic activity, at the same time preserve some of the wetlands we have. We at Visit Maldives always try to promote the experiences that go hand in hand in promoting ecotourism to sustain the environmental attractions of the Maldives. Being close neighbors, I sincerely wish all success for all your ventures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thoyb. We indeed look forward to this association as well with our dear neighbor, as he just mentioned, who are doing extremely well, exceptionally well in ecotourism. And it's my pleasure to present to you a veteran feminist and activist who's right with us on the stage. He's also the General Secretary of All India Democratic Women's Association. Proud to present to you Ms. Maryam.
Thank you. I thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to make this brief intervention. I'll be speaking in the next session tomorrow, so I will keep my thoughts very, very short. First of all, I think we should congratulate our dear Health Minister, Minister for Women and Child Development, dear KK Shaileja teacher, who has been a teacher and is still teaching all of us. We should also congratulate our dear MLA, who has been a colleague of mine right from the student movement days, MLA Shri Mr. Pradeep. The officer, Sunish Sir, CEO, a very energetic person as described by Shaileja teacher, our dear Aishwarya ji, who has been an inspiring example, and all of us, all of you who have come from far and wide to participate here. I think this innovative initiative that has been taken and all the people related to this initiative needs very good congratulations and should be highly commended, because this is a time when in totality the women's aspect in various spheres is under very severe attack, and we are all experiencing it and facing it. At such a time, opening up of new avenues for women, for their empowerment, for integrating them into the development of the nation, development of the state, is an extremely inspiring thing to happen. The LDF government, under the leadership of the Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan, has taken many steps to address the issues and problems of various sections of the people, including women. And this government should be applauded for the bold initiatives that it has taken. We have seen that it has functioned in the most difficult times. Kerala has faced tremendous onslaught one after the other. And I think it is an examination that the people of Kerala should be proud of, that today in place is an administration that has stood the test of times and has faced these challenges so boldly that it has been inspiring for the entire country to take up such initiatives. Also, another reason why this administration, this government should be applauded, and as an activist of the women's movement, I would take this opportunity to say this, that in the recently held local body elections, a very, very large number of women have got elected. It has been possible because there is a hand of the administration that says, hold on to this hand and come forward. Also, they need to be applauded is because, as we have all seen, that this is the singular government that has taken the initiative of promoting the youth, the young women into positions of responsibility like mayors or president of the Zilla Panchayats and all that. 23-year-old and 22-year-old girls have today taken up positions and given an opportunity to try and understand what it means to work and what it means to be a part of this entire system. This has really been a very encouraging thing for the entire women's movement. The alternative path of development, despite severe constraints, we all know how Kerala is being given a step, I won't say motherly, I'll say stepfatherly treatment, because that motherly is also, again, you know, the language is made in such a way that women are only caricatured. So a step treatment where resources are concerned. But in spite of that, the alternative path of development that is being evolved is diametrically opposite to what is happening in the entire country. And that is why this is a beacon of hope, a ray of light, and this gender park, this initiative, I'm sure all of us will benefit a lot in these discussions and take this forward. We wish the Kerala government, the gender park administration, and everybody over here all the best in this initiative, and we are sure they will be successful, because these are the days when women need to be given that reaching out hand. And as I was saying some time back, beware the men of Kerala, because it's going to be the women years in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Maryam, for those words of generous appreciation, and thank you for that candor. I think the audience did break into laughter for the first time on day one of ICGE itself, so thanks to you for that. And to wrap up this inaugural ceremony, and thank you all formally, we have our guiding light and also a member of the Kerala State Planning Board, Dr. Mrudul Eepan, joining us online. Welcome, ma'am.
It's from me? Okay. Good morning to all. I missed a little bit of your, when you called me, so I'm sorry. Good morning to all. I'm really very happy. I mean, such wonderful ideas have been thrown up in this inaugural session. So the inaugural itself has been a very useful and thought-provoking session on a theme which had always been an area of concern, and now due to pandemic even more, which is to empower women and the transgenders economically, since they are among the most adversely affected in terms of jobs and income losses. Many people have spelled this out. Existing gender inequalities should not be aggravated. And entrepreneurship in sustainable social business is one of the means towards gender empowerment. I think a very important word of caution that has been given by Brinda is the need for cultural empowerment. I think we are all realizing this, that there is need for cultural empowerment, and without that, economic empowerment can actually prove to be a backlash in many cases. So this is something which we have very much in mind, and thanks to one of the advisors on the gender park, that is Mallika Sarabhai, who has always been emphasizing this. So we are definitely very much aware of this.
Ma'am, we lost your voice. We're not able to hear you.
I don't know how much you heard. I wanted to say that this whole issue of cultural empowerment, which Brinda talked about, we think is very, very relevant. And this, as I said, has also been emphasized by one of our advisors, that is Mallika Sarabhai, who has been always telling us that, there should be some culture also in this gender path. So we are very much aware of it, and thank you, Brinda. for this extremely important. I mean, I really think it's extremely important. Now, we note that some of the gender studies which have been done recently show that while men outnumber women in terms of entrepreneurship rates, if you look at, but in social enterprise, the gender gap is much lower. So there's a huge potential here. That's what I feel. There's a huge potential here that we should exploit. Now, the inaugural has set a tone for further discussions, and in the technical sessions to follow, focusing on which will focus on the major advantages, the challenges of social enterprises, in particular financing of social enterprises, creating a gender economic system, an ecosystem which is gender sensitive, are the issues which are going to be discussed. Let me now, I was really so much fascinated by the sort of things which came up in the inaugural. I'll come to my task now of actually thanking all the speakers on the dais and off the dais who have spoken today. Let me start with the chair first, Shri Pradeep Kumar, who's a very well-known social innovator, and the most acclaimed thing being the way he transformed the government vocational higher secondary education school for girls. I mean, I actually went and visited myself to see if it has really happened. I was absolutely delighted to see that that is so. I mean, he's always been supporting Gender Path even before all this has happened, and we look forward to his continuing support. Thank you so much, Mr. Pradeep. I do not know how to thank Shailaja teacher because there's so much to thank her for. But I should say one thing here, that it was actually her vision and commitment which enabled us to reach this stage, and we are looking forward to the setting up of the International World Trade Center for Women, for which teacher has managed to get the initial funding. Thank you so much for your presence today and for this inspiration and this push that you keep giving to the Gender Path, without which we would not be able to have reached here. The third person whom I would like to thank is Aishwarya Pradhan. I am so happy that she has not only visibilized herself, but she is helping to her organization visibilize transgenders, which is a very, very important thing at the moment, because in Kerala, though we have the policy, we find that very few transgenders actually come forward to take advantage of all the schemes that we have for them. So that is a wonderful, they can be very much part of social enterprises and set up enterprises. So we would like that, this to happen here also. And I'm really happy that you have been such a great help in for your own community. And I hope this is a learning lesson for us also in Kerala, that we should really be visibilizing, and this whole issue of social acceptance that you talked about, which is the most worrying thing, this whole the stigma that sometimes exists, that we are much reduced now, and we hope to do so in future also. So thank you so much, Aishwarya, for being here today and giving us such a very inspiring talk about how you managed to cross your hurdles. The next is Brinda. I just mentioned how the 3 points that you made are absolutely, so pertinent that there's no need for me to go over them, but I think cultural empowerment, giving voices to women, and building unity with other organizations other than the government, I think are very, very important things for us to consider. And knowing teacher who is so liberal in her ideas about who should be involved and who can be involved, almost everybody can be involved in our activities, is her attitude. So I don't think there will be any problem in mobilizing all the other types of organizations that really would be very necessary for us to sustain this agenda part. So thank you so much, Brinda, for your wonderful the points that you made. The fifth is Mr. Jonathan Lander, who's Second Secretary, Embassy of Sweden. We all, of course, look upon Sweden as the haven of gender justice, but it's very clear that there are problems there. Normally it arises in the context of the care economy, violence, and I think all countries face that issue. And it was very interesting to hear that they have a feminist policy with the 3 R's, the rights, the representation, and the resources. So this is something which we would like to share. You should share with us. Thank you so much for your presence here today. Then we have Mrs. Barbara Langley, who is the director for the Center for International Private Enterprises in the US, and which is part of the Chambers of Commerce in the US. And very interesting thing that she talked about was fostering ecosystems for entrepreneurship. I think that's a very important thing, how to create that gender-sensitive ecosystem to promote entrepreneurship, which is very, very relevant for us. And the fact that there have been problems that women face due to violence, due to loss of jobs, and the fact that you have to actually offer your sexual services to be able to retain jobs is something I had not heard of as yet. But this is something very alarming, and it should not be allowed to happen. And the fact that men should also do more work. I hope what Barbara meant was household work, that they should also do more household work, and women's voices should be amplified. I think these were all very important lessons for us to learn. Thank you so much, Barbara, for your talk. We have Thoyb Mohammed, who is the former Minister for Tourism, Art and Culture, Maldives. I mean, I need not say that we will definitely be needing your cooperation and support, because Kerala also is, as Tisha was saying, one of the areas which are opening up in Kerala, which will open up once the pandemic is to some extent reduced, is tourism. And we know about Maldives tourism. Kerala is also well known for its responsible tourism, and ecotourism is also what we are trying to develop. And definitely we will need your support. Thank you so much for offering your support, and thank you so much for presenting your thoughts here today. We have now Maryam, whom one knows as a friend and comrade. And Maryam is once again, keeping track of what is happening in Kerala. We are very happy that so many teams and programs that are there for Kerala, for the women and the transgenders, are being definitely observed and perceived and taken as sources of strength for the government of Kerala. And the fact that the Chief Minister actually in one of his evening talks, I don't know whether you all are aware that not so much now, but in the early days of the pandemic, almost every evening, the CM would appear and give us the facts and figures on the pandemic and the steps that the government was taking. And in one of those speeches, I think it was early in the days of the pandemic, he said, we know that women are now back home and with the institutions closed, children are also there. Sometimes the husbands are also there because they may have lost their work. So there are a whole lot of, the work has intensified for women. Men should help women in household work. It is not for women alone. He said that very, very strongly. So, it was so wonderful that the government has been such a support for women. Of course, there are certain things we are still unhappy with. There is still persistence of violence. Of course, we think more steps should be taken to control violence. But one other thing I just wanted to say, I know we are running short of time, but this has been something which really came to me as a very pleasant surprise, that government policy, especially on emphasizing women's employment during the flood, for instance. 1819 was a time when a lot of emphasis was put on Narega, on Kudumbashri, on we have an urban employment guarantee scheme, and that seems to have paid off. Because if you look at the latest PLFS for 1819, we find that Kerala's work participation rate is now 20%, higher than the All India. Of course, very low, as teacher was saying, it is a very low percentage, but it is now higher than India. So these are things which we think can happen if the government, acts in the way that it should act, very sensitively and very appropriately, that policies will result in favorable outcomes for women. So let me thank. I think the speakers are. I think now I have to thank. Of course, Sunish, you have got enough thank yous from everybody, but I must also put in my thanks to you. You're the one who welcomed us. and you are, behind teacher, giving her all the support that she wants, and we are very, very happy with that. That you also, in a way, sort of very dynamic in implementing what teacher has in her mind. So that is a very good advantage for the gender part. Let me finally thank all the participants also who have listened online and who are now participating in this conference also. Let me thank all of you for participating in this conference, which has started off very well with so many issues actually flagged off already. Thank you so much.
While delivering the vote of thanks too, one can see through the determined woman of clarity that she is. Thank you, Dr. Epan, for delivering the vote of thanks. And with that, we come to the end of the inaugural ceremony of ICGE 2021. We are moving into our next session, which is a keynote session. But before that, we'll need a couple of minutes to rearrange the stage. I thank all our esteemed guests on stage once again. By the way, Shailaja teacher will be on stage for the next session as well, but then we will give them a quick break, shall we? Thank you. Thank you all of us. May I have a couple of volunteers to remove the extra chairs, the sofas from the stage, so that the stage is set for the next session? We just need one chair on stage for Srimati Shailaja teacher. Our next session is a keynote session, which is being delivered by an Indian development economist who's currently a professor at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. We will get into the details of the maverick who's joining us online, rather. Next. We request all of you to be around because we are getting started with our next session right away. If anybody needs a quick bathroom break, please, all of you are welcome. But other than that, please do come back soon if you're going to take a break, that is. We're getting started with the session soon. Also, please note that she is joining us from the United States, so there's a time zone difference, and like I said earlier, she's keeping awake for us, so let's not get delayed with the start of the session. For the great audience that you've been through the inaugural session, I think I need to tell you this. There's tea and coffee available right outside, but please pick those cups up and come back right in because our speaker is waiting. I request all of you to come back soon, picking up the tea cups inside the hall. Thank you. We're getting started with the session in another 2 minutes, so all the participants, delegates, guests who are outside grabbing the cup of tea and coffee, please come right back in with your coffee and tea. We need to get started on time and honor the presence of this person who's joining us from the United States. She's staying awake for us. We request all our delegates and participants to settle down. We hope you got your cup of coffee or tea. The Gender Park is honored to have the presence of an eminent Indian development economist who's currently a professor at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. She has taught economics at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi for nearly 35 years, after which she moved abroad and has previously held positions in universities like Tufts and Cambridge, and has, through that period also, taught in universities across India. She has authored and edited close to 19 books, which includes Never Done and Poorly Paid, Women's Work in Globalizing India. That's just one of those 19 titles she has produced. Of course, she's an economist and a feminist who does not require such a long preface in front of an audience like this, but here goes still. Presenting to you, Professor Jayati Ghosh.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be with you, even if only virtually. How I wish I could actually be with you there in Kerala. It's always a pleasure to be with you physically or virtually. Why? Not just because I have so many friends and comrades in Kerala, but because there's always a sense of excitement, of positive thinking, of looking forward, of thinking of how to change things. And I realized that every time I have been involved in any event or activity, any discussion in Kerala, some of those things have actually then been sought to be put in practice. People are not just enthused about what they do, but they actually do implement many things. It's a very, very different feeling from so many other conferences, so many other events, so many other places that people get together to talk about these things. So I really do feel very, very privileged. Thank you for inviting me to this. But of course, we also know that this is really a bad time to be a woman in India. The pandemic has been terrible for women across the world. It's not all women, of course, but the majority of women have been impacted in all kinds of adverse ways. The employment participation has gone down for two reasons. First, women have been disproportionately thrown out of employment. They are much more likely to lose their jobs. This is particularly marked in India. And they have been also forced often to leave the labor force because they're doing much more unpaid work at home because of various pandemic type restrictions, because of children being at home all day, not being able to go to school, because of the denial of other social services and care services in particular. In India, we know that already the women's workforce participation rate was unbelievably low and had been falling. And it got worse during the pandemic. The little data that we have has shown us that it is actually significantly deteriorated. And in addition to that, we've had all kinds of other adverse reactions for women. We've had domestic violence increasing during the lockdown and after the lockdown as well. Significant increase in hunger across the country, which is disproportionately felt by women and girls within families because of the failure of the central government to release adequate food grain stocks to feed the people even when the godowns are bursting, even when we have an excess, significant excess of food grain stocks with the Food Corporation of India. We have a decline in assisted birth. This was very marked during the pandemic. During the lockdown, there was a 40% decline in institutional deliveries. Since then, we know that this problem has continued because of various difficulties that have been faced by women and the greater expense, the cut down in Janani Suraksha Yojana and other things that were actually designed to help women have the institutional deliveries. And there has been, as I mentioned earlier, a very significant increase in unpaid work. And of course, the entire system, the health system, which operates on the significantly underpaid work of women frontline workers, Anganwadi workers, Anganwadi helpers, Ashas, and a vast range of other scheme workers. They have been brutally exposed during this pandemic because not only have they had to continue working and expose themselves to health hazards and so on, but they have in turn been denied adequate protection, adequate facilities, sometimes even the social security that was promised them, they haven't received. In several states of the country, they haven't even been paid for several months now because state governments have been running out of money as the center has not provided the required resources. So as I said, in India, it's not a good time to be a woman. And obviously, these circumstances won't just change on their own. They have to be countered by proactive government action. And there are many things that can be done. There are many things that the government knows it can do, that everybody has been telling the central government to do, which have not been done. As I say, why it is so wonderful to be in Kerala and to be able to talk about these issues is because many of the things which I am going to mention are things which are already being done, have been tried to be implemented over the last few years, or in the pipeline, or being talked about. In other words, I do believe that, we are in a state where you have the very good fortune of having wonderful women leaders, but you also have, I think, an increasingly more sensitive, let me put it that way, increasingly more sensitive leadership, which is trying to do some of these things which I have just mentioned. Now, what does that mean? It means that unlike the rest of India, which has seen dramatic declines in women's workforce participation, in Kerala you actually saw an increase from, I think it was 16.4% in 2017 to about 20.4% in 2018-19, which is unlike the rest of the country. This, it's a very low rate. This is nothing to celebrate. Let us remember this. It is a shockingly low rate. But Kerala's women's workforce participation rate was always lower than the rest of the country. And the rest of the country has fallen so low that it is now below Kerala. And it has continued to fall. And even during the pandemic period, the data we have from CMI tells us it has continued to fall. However, in Kerala, it has not. It has increased, and it continued to increase even in the pandemic months. I think this is largely due to proactive government policy. Definitely, there was an attempt to maintain the employment guarantee in the rural areas, and there was the institution of the Ayankali, the urban employment guarantee, which is still limited, but nonetheless is providing some source of employment, which is why we see a significant increase in casual labor. And we also see an increase in self-employment. It's the self-employment part. I think a lot of your discussions over the next few days are really going to focus on that, what you are calling micro-entrepreneurship of women. So I will come back to that issue. But we have to remember that 20% is not significant. And it is still a massive waste of a huge human capability in the state, which is highly educated. The most educated women in the country, Kerala has the highest ratio. And so therefore a lot more needs to be done. And I know that this is a government that wants to do it and is willing to think of new ways to do it and to push everything that has worked so far. I would just like to, I think, appreciate the efforts of the left front government this time and also in the previous, when it was here before, because I think this was recognized. The problem of the low women's workforce participation was recognized from the beginning, and there was a focus on enabling conditions. I remember when the earlier left front government was putting a lot of emphasis on in its budgets on public toilets, to the point where I think there were people even calling it, toilet budget, because so much money was going into toilets. But this awareness that it is the extension of basic facilities, of amenities, of things that will allow women to go out into public spaces and be in public areas without worrying about things like that is absolutely essential. And that has been one of the enabling conditions, the making sure you have street lights, making sure you have public toilets available everywhere. It turns out that was a massive boom also during the pandemic, that it made a difference. So there was significant increase, I believe, in that, which one of the fruits of that is this increase that we've seen. At least the direction of change is a positive change, and I think that's greatly to be welcomed. And of course, more to be done there. But also there has been a recognition that you need to increase public employment directly. Kerala is one of the few states that brought in an urban employment guarantee. As I said, still very small. And it is considering introducing skilled activities and training into both urban and rural. I think that is very, very important. Because in a state like Kerala, you cannot simply rely on what is being used everywhere else for employment guarantee, earthwork and very basic and arduous work. We need to think of the employment guarantee as delivering anything that can improve the quality of life of people, which includes a wide range of care activities, which includes a whole range of activities for urban regeneration, for greening the economy, for greening productive facilities. And many of those are not necessarily extremely arduous physical work. They can imply or require some degree of skill. And I think Kerala is perfectly placed to actually expand that kind of public work in a way that will not just provide employment for women, but will also have significant multiplier effects throughout the economy and ease supply constraints in particular areas. I believe there's also a possibility of moving towards doing things like that in the digital economy, but I'll come back to that. There's another critical area, and this of course everybody talks about it. The minute you talk about micro-entrepreneurship and so on, they talk about access to credit and the significance of making sure that women, self-employed, women who are running small enterprises get access to credit. Forget on equal terms with men, which they don't at the moment. It's much harder for them, of course, we know that. But if we could provide our small enterprises and micro enterprises access to credit on the same terms that the large corporates receive, then in fact, which should be the order of the day, but it's not, then in fact we would say yes, we're approaching something where these enterprises can be viable. At the moment, that is still not the case. And we also know that micro entrepreneurs need much more. They need input assistance, marketing assistance, often design assistance and all kinds of things like that. This is very difficult for individuals to do, which is why a micro enterprise model which is devoted to just leaving everybody out there on their own very rarely works, and really hasn't worked in the rest of the country for decades now. And therefore, the cooperative model, which is one that has been expressed in Kerala very well through the Kutumbashri, I believe that's the way forward. I think that's the way to go. A significant extension of not just only the Kutumbashri, you could think of a range of other cooperatives, maybe specific cooperatives designed for very specific activities rather than putting everything under the Kutumbashri umbrella, but a focus on the cooperative model which allows for economies of scale and allows for cooperation among producers, which has already delivered, I believe, some very excellent results, and there is massive scope for developing that further. I think this can actually be a way in which Kerala shows that vision to the rest of the world and the rest of the country. Because elsewhere where you've had self-help groups being federated, the focus has not really been so much on a cooperative model. It's been more on a top-down kind of federation, which doesn't have the same beneficial effect. These are enabling conditions, shall we say. But there are other very significant enabling conditions which relate much more to the other work that women end up doing, and they do that in Kerala as well. The significant amounts of unpaid work being done by women within households, within neighborhoods and communities. So how do we deal with this unpaid work? There are the famous, with regard to care work in particular. Care, of course, considering care, it's of course direct care, which is looking after the young, the old, the sick, the disabled, and all of the other members of the household who are otherwise healthy, but nonetheless need to be cooked for, cleaned for, etc., etc., etc. That entire range of care work, the gender construction still in Kerala, like the rest of India, is very much the responsibility of women in the household. How do we change that? How do we reduce this big burden of unpaid work, which means that women who choose or are able to go out and search for employment have a double burden and therefore face time poverty, face a very significant decline in time availability, which doesn't just reduce their own leisure, it reduces the quality of the goods and services they can provide in unpaid fashion. If you're exhausted working all day, commuting, coming back, then to do all of these other activities, it's not just that it's exhausting for the person concerned, it also changes and reduces the quality of the work provided so that the entire household is poorer as a result. How do we change that? The standard answer now, it's in a sense the ILO has also taken it